January 10th meeting of the Finance Committee at 7:00 p.m., small hearing room, Town Hall. This meeting, it's my obligation to say that this meeting is being recorded for the members of the public. There is nobody from the public here, but for members of the public, this meeting is being recorded, both audio and video. If anybody else would like to record this meeting, they have to let the chair know. That's done. So the meeting is called Order Approval of the Minutes of December 13th meeting. You all got a copy, you got them late, I apologize for that, but you got them.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of December 13th.
Is there a second?
Second.
And they said on the video that even with the video, you should at least record votes.
Okay.
So as
I'll
a
do
clerk. Thank you. So it's moved and seconded to approve the minutes from the last meeting
As written.
as written. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous vote. I talked to the town accountant, and there are no transfer requests coming to us tonight, so that's all set. So the next item on the agenda is probably the biggest one of the night, and that's the capital plan discussion and possible vote. I just found from experience that it's best to try and vote things when it's freshest in your mind. We've had a couple of workshops, we've had a couple of presentations. We're about as far along on the capital plan as we're gonna get in terms of getting new information. So we may be ready for a vote, we may not, but I can tell you from experience that we're gonna put this away for a while and get into the budget and not pull this out again until later. If we take stances tonight, it's okay. We can change our minds later and those kinds of things. We haven't got the final document in our hands yet, but we think it's the final. The town administrator did say he was gonna make some tweaks to it, but we're pretty close. So the idea would, I think, and you can correct me if you're wrong, we can do nothing tonight if that's what you would desire. But I think we should go through kind of department by department and just see if we're comfortable with this or not. We have kind of three choices. I don't think we have the choice to indefinitely postpone this, because I think there will be somebody making a positive motion on this no matter what. So I don't think the Finance Committee has that choice. I think we have to have a positive motion or let somebody else handle it. And I think the positive motion can come in two forms. It can be to just simply accept and adopt it as written, or accept and adopt it with the following changes, if we want to make any. So I think those are the two kind of positions we are. Unless somebody else has some thoughts as to what we could do with this. So my suggestion would be we just go through department by department and talk about them as if we want to make changes. And I know I have some that I would recommend, but
by accepting the plan, we just accept the plan. We don't accept the articles in the plan.
right,
The line
as
items in
a
the plan.
separate thing.
Yeah.
The funding articles, which will be this year's part of the plan, we'll discuss as separate articles, and we'll take a position, yea or nay, money-wise on those. This is just the no-charge article that's gonna contain the plan.
It gives us a snapshot of the capital requests.
Right. Angela?
My question is that the selectmen wrote an article that, not an article, wrote us a document that said that this year they wanted to stay in about the 2.5% range. If you look at what we have as the beginning of the plans, we're like at 7%. Now, if they really want to get down to 2.5, we have to look at these capital items to see which, and rank them and see which we would like to remove, not like to remove, but have to remove at some
Right.
different year. If indeed the 7.5% is fine, then that relieves us from doing that job. I just don't know where we are. It's very hard to do a budget or plan if you don't know what the target is.
Right. And we won't know it all until we get a lot of the other pieces into place. I just think that talking about it tonight some, and maybe getting a formulation on some of the departments
That's fine.
might help us. I don't know. I'll also say, I know right up front that a couple people have potential conflicts, and we'll talk about that as we get to those different departments. That's okay, there's a way to deal with that. The Ethics Commission is very clear that you don't talk about things where you have a conflict, but you can then later come back and talk about the entire document. They have less problem with that, and they have many cases that back that up. You can talk about, be a member of the schools and still vote on the school budget overall. You just can't talk about your department and vote for your department, kind of deal, those kind of things. Jack?
And Mike Ford, who appoints us, can also take somebody off the hook if he feels that the conflict is not a sufficient
Right.
import to worry about.
Yeah.
He
Well,
did that with me last
we're
year.
gonna talk about that as it comes up, but yeah. So, do we wanna go? Do we wanna proceed with some of this stuff?
I'd like to have some chats with that.
All right,
Get
so,
started.
now, on, just quickly on the conflict, if I know of it as chair, I'm supposed to bring it up. If I don't know of it, you're supposed to
Don't
bring
bring
it
it
up.
up.
I won't bring it up, so I'm gonna bring up the ones I know about. In any event, we'll take the town administrators, the first portion here. There's several things asking for money. One of this is this whole sidewalks things where there's a grant potentially coming and then not. So this one here is probably, in my opinion, okay just sitting here because we're waiting for grant information. We'll probably make a decision on that one item later. It's
So
current, it's
that's
this
the
year.
$576,000 one.
Yeah, the two things added up together, the sidewalk things and the grant, is like 700,000, and the town administrator has 30,000 as the planning money, and then the rest being coming from the grant. So if we don't need the planning money because we didn't get the grant, that won't come forward. If we do, it will all come forward. So I don't have any problem with this one sitting here right now. The next item on his list is the demolition of the Bank Street property, the old fire station. $60,000 is the demolition cost, and he's proposing that that comes from CPC funds.
On what basis?
CPC?
CPC?
No.
Free
Says
cash.
free cash. Free cash, yeah.
Did I misread it? Oh, I'm sorry.
It's a
It's very
green.
small print on his, I gotta look at mine.
Yeah.
And,
Free cash, okay.
Dan, I have a quick question.
Yes,
The numbers that aren't highlighted in some kind of color, what's the funding source for those?
when it says NR next to it in that article column.
Yes.
That's not recommended.
Oh,
So the walkway reconstruct, the next one there is not recommended. So, and then if you look on
Oh,
the
I see.
last
Okay.
page, you'll see that everything totals up to the 12 million.
right.
And then if you break down all the little pieces, that also totals up to the 12 million, and you see the NR
NR,
column.
okay,
1.2
gotcha.
million is not recommended at this point. That
Okay.
can change, but it's not recommended. So $60,000 for Bank Street, free cash. Anybody having problems now with that? We'll get an actual article with that. But as part of the capital plan, it's over 50,000, it kind of makes sense.
And
John?
just a question, if that's to demo the building, I understand that, but is that to sell the land, or is that still under discussion too?
That's under discussion. Apparently, they're looking to strike a deal with
Something, yeah.
2 other parties.
So we
At
don't know,
least two
we
of
don't
them.
know the disposition of the land.
So by the time we get there, but either way,
The building.
if it's going in that direction, the building comes down.
I guess
So-
the question on that is, if they're striking the deal with a second party, can they be on the hook to demo the building at their expense?
It's possible. Like I said, when we get to the actual article on this, that's probably a question we should ask. Jack?
So we've got, for the first time in a long time, a lot of money going into sidewalks. This says like 1.3 million between the three.
Items, yeah?
What's the feeling around that in terms of the fact we haven't done anything in a long, long time, now there's a bunch of big numbers in front of us? What's that discussion all about?
Well, 2 things. One is the work that Mr. Hart is doing on ADA compliance.
Yeah.
And sidewalks is a portion of that, and I just remember from my days on recreation that, you know, on a sidewalk that sticks up an inch over the next panel is a problem. Those kind of things, they have to be fixed. So I think a lot of this is repairing and fixing those things. Way back when, in the 90s, we used to have the $100,000 for highway maintenance, and then we'd have an additional $25,000 as a separate item just for sidewalks. I don't think they're doing that anymore. We haven't done any kind of major stuff for sidewalks for a long time. So I think it has to do with ADA more than anything. So the next item, the 576.5, is not recommended at this point. And, you know, maybe later, that's something we do. We move that into another year and say, well, there's no sense leaving it here. Or we recommend taking it out, one or the other, right? If it's not recommended. Maintain the West Harwich School. This number seems to be going up. I think it was at 10 and now it's at 20. And is proposed to come out of free cash.
No.
I see it at 10, free cat. So budgeted 10? West Howard School.
Oh, you have an older one.
Oh, this is the one you sent us? Or did you give
Oh,
us an
okay.
updated one?
There you go, Bonnie.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Throw that one away. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
I have a question.
And that's what it's done. It's gone up.
Okay.
Yes.
Why is that considered a capital expenditure?
Right one.
It really isn't, except that there would be, in his mind, some sort of item following this. This is to find out what the building needs, more or less, and then there would be an
But
article.
it says maintain West Harwich School.
Mhm.
That to me is maintenance. Not, what?
There's a lot.
Well, and that could be one of the things we do.
Right.
We could say that we accept and adopt this, and that we, under the town administrators column, we recommend that maintenance of the West Harwich School be taken off this list. I mean, that certainly
Well-
could be part of our motion. And probably there may be, what I'm suspecting, is there's gonna be a few of those by the time we're all said and done, where we just say, you know what, let's clean it up ourselves. They're struggling, the selectmen are struggling with how clean to make it. We can help them along there if that's what we want to choose to do, and just say, this doesn't belong here. You know, until there's a plan with a recommendation, and we don't want to work our way into this like we've done some of our other projects in the past, and all of a sudden we're in it.
But isn't this part of the typical process where you start off with trying to figure out what it is, the plan, and then you vote for the plan or you don't vote for the plan the next town meeting?
Right, and that's what he has in there as a number to be determined.
Because we have insisted collectively that we have estimates for the big project, not just for the plan, not for the plan.
But I mean, I don't know if I know I missed some of the capital outlay committee meetings, but do you remember them talking about what's gonna happen with that building when it's all said and done? Has anybody?
Not yet.
I'm not exactly sure where the selectmen are, because what I've heard basically is that they've tried to get people to come in and take over the building and put various things there, and nobody's wanted to do it. There's a group of people who are very interested, that's one side, and there's a group of people who are very interested in doing something there. And what the selectmen are doing, I think, are giving them some more time to do the something, to get it together. I would hope that the selectmen would pick a time frame and say, you know, we can support this for 6 months or whatever, and at the end of that, we're gonna do something else. You know, that kind of thing, because I don't think they're gonna wanna spend money there to do nothing. And the other thought, and it's just a thought, is if there's a group that wants to do it, we can certainly lease it to them for $1 a year if they pick up the costs. And we could give them, it's like we could give them, 6 months to do that, or a year, or whatever. we're just paying $20,000 to do maintenance of something that we don't know where it's going is kind of difficult with the kind of dollars we're spending.
Yeah. See, to me, the $20,000, if it's something that stabilizes the building and keeps it from falling in on itself or whatever, we did that with the South Harwich building there. Originally, we put money into the new roof and foundation to make sure it was stable in the beginning, and then later decided what to do. But to me, the to be determined part is like in year 3 or 4. I mean, we're not ready for anything at all, really. And this is just a budgetary thing. So if this came out completely, I don't have a problem with that myself, but that's,
Why is it even here? It's under 50,000.
well, we have always said that if there's a planning item and then a bigger item later, and on his, I don't have it on mine, because it was just added later. He put TBD, to be determined, on the next year. So he
Okay.
has 20,000 this year, and then a number to be determined next year. Well, you know, I think we're more than a year away from that number, but that's just how I'm feeling. But that's something to keep in mind if we are gonna put together a motion. And this is gonna be in the budget, so this is already gonna be
Part of the budget.
appropriated, and our questions to do with it are gonna be about the budget already. This Article 4 is gonna come before Article 9. It's gonna be done by the time we get to this.
And we can amend the article, we can
Right.
add money, we can subtract money, so right now it's gonna be a few more months before all that gets clear.
Right. So,
What is the house road revision?
there was some discussions, and that's another one that I think he has to be determined. He has no money in there now, and he has to be determined. So he has two to be determined, one this year and one next year. The idea being that to better map out and line that one, or resurface it, or something at Schoolhouse to provide more parking. I think they determined that if they reline it, they could get X amount of spaces out of it,
For narrower parking?
something, I don't know. But there's no money in it this year, at the moment.
What's a Queen Anne Road solar expansion?
That one, I don't know. Do you know on that one? Mark knows.
A stub put in for the green communities thing to stick something on Queen Anne Road, so it's like a placeholder for something. I'm not sure if there's an actual plan for it.
Right.
Needed a site to like go with the green community.
And it says TBD and TBD, 2 years in a row.
Okay.
So, you know, what, the capital outlay committee did its job and put together a plan. Now it's going to the selectmen and to us to determine what goes in front of the voters, you know, what actually gets put forward as a motion. You know, maybe we want to clean some of these things up, I don't know. Maybe they're not ready for prime time yet, maybe year 2, year 3, year 4, this is a 7-year plan right now. You know, we don't ever, we have, last year it was $8.5 million, now it's $12 million. You know, it's gone up $4 million in a year. We don't have to keep putting these things in there, I don't think. And this is not determined yet. John?
Well, question on that, Dana. Since this is a 7-year plan, are some of these articles have been on this plan now for 7 years, or are they just popping up this year for the first time?
Yes and no. Some of them are just popping up and some of them are not. I do have, if you go back to when I sent you the spreadsheet electronically, I have 19 there as well. And I do have with me tonight, I believe, 19.
Okay.
So we can compare certain things. The demo of West Harwich School was on there last year, the demo of it, $30,000, and it didn't go anywhere. So if anybody has a question about what was I have a copy here. We can go back and forth on some of them. But you're right, some things were here, some things are new, and that's, you know, according to the rules that you got on, that's not supposed to, it's gonna require 2/3 vote to have this plan put into place. if you
Right.
didn't, they were on here for 7 years and you just lopped off the first year and added a new 7th year, it just takes a simple majority pass. Jeff?
As my Japanese advisor used to say, you're not married to your plan. So
Okay.
don't let it have you, hold you hostage if the priorities need to be different or
Sure, I
the
understand
urgency
that.
is such, but don't do it willy-nilly.
Yeah, like if it's historically, every
Yeah.
year, new things popping up, and something needs to be.
There's a process
Yeah.
problem, yeah.
And, you know, that's part of where we come in, you know, and just say,
Right.
well, you know,
Part of the
Plan
problem.
for it.
part of the problem, right. So there's nothing there at this point, and we'll see what happens. The next one is the green vehicles. We talked about this a little bit at the public hearing, but, and I'll just give you my feeling, you can do whatever you want, but I'm thinking that these should be treated, again, the budget's already gonna be voted by the time we get to this. We put cruisers in the budget. If he can fit these in, he's got the mandate from the selectmen to satisfy our Green Community Act, he can fit them in.
As a
He
budget item.
can't fit as a budget, and that's how he has payment. But it doesn't belong on the capital plan, I don't think. I think we should treat it as the same as we do our cruises. So one of the things I would recommend is when we come up with a motion, it might be to accept and adopt with the following changes, and one change would be to take this whole row right out, maybe, as a possibility. Again, it will already have been voted. We will already discuss it separately as a budget item. There's no sense, again, discussing it as a capital item after the fact, right? It's my thought, but,
And in that public meeting, the selectmen asked Chris to do a chart or something.
right, we
to
need
say
more
that-
information on them, yes,
And, you
but
know,
it's a budget item at this point.
one of the things I asked for Monday night, and I want to get, is that how did this whole decision process and economic justification, if any, take place? Because all of a sudden, one of the ones that wasn't on there last year, here it is, here's an
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
I think I know why it came up, but I don't know why it was the right thing to do.
Okay, Administrator, all set? Any other questions? Think we can do something? All right, before you leave,
Yep.
I know that there is a conflict on this one.
Yes.
But I just wanted to say a couple things. It's not my decision as to whether this is a conflict or not, and it's not even her decision or your decision when we get to the library or whoever else has whatever. It's the State Ethics Commission's decision as to whether ever. Bonnie has done it right. She has produced, there is a form you fill out. They have a form now. You can go right online and fill it out. You can get an answer over the phone. You can get an answer fairly easily, fairly quickly. She's done it right. She hasn't got the answer yet as to whether or not she has a conflict on this particular portion, cemeteries. I'm not going to speculate one way or another. I know that after we're done discussing this, she can come back, but my advice at this point would be that she just leave the
Recuse
room
myself.
and
Yep.
recuse yourself on this one, and we'll invite you back when we're beyond this point.
Yep, I did speak to them,
Yep.
and so they were very clear about what I could and could not vote on
Okay.
with respect to the cemetery.
So as long as
and
you're fine
Robin.
with that?
Right, and
You're all set?
Robin, so it would be anything that was relating to her salary or her benefits, I would absolutely have to recuse myself going forward as long as I was on this committee.
Yeah. But
This,
as
this
part of the capital
particular
plan.
pet cemetery issue is unclear. They're gonna look into it and
Yeah.
provide me in 30 days back an answer, but for the time being, I'm gonna recuse myself just to be
Just
above board.
good, wise thinking.
Correct.
All right?
So,
Very
see you
good.
shortly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And there's actually a couple things on the cemetery this year and next year, and, you know, I think there's more of a conflict with the Arboretum than the pet cemetery. The pet cemetery has now been ruled that it's not it's not a cemetery anymore, it's a burial ground. And it probably may or may not end up under the jurisdiction of cemeteries. It may end up be just a place we maintain, and that goes to highways. But my feeling is that this is another one that's not ready for prime time. This is the 131,000, the first item here, is supposed to come from the fund that somewhere later in the meeting will be created, or somewhere before this will be created. The creation of this fund is gonna come that night. And then plots will be sold, and then the money, why are we voting an amount to already be used when the fund hasn't even been created yet?
Yeah.
At least that's my understanding
Cart
of it.
before the horse.
So in my mind, and add to that all the discussion that's going on in town about this. This, to me, in my opinion, safest bet is to move this out. I'm even thinking, not next year, move it out to year 7. Get it out there and let them get all of their ducks in a row. All it takes is a 2/3 vote to bring it back. They can bring it back any way they want, but in my mind, this is not ready for any kind of vote coming up. That's just my feeling on it. The perpetual care one, on the next one, the Arboretum is a completely different thing, but on this, the whole pet cemetery business, I think, belongs out there. Now, I don't think it belongs just off the plan, because even the people who don't want it somehow have to deal with it. There has to be a mechanism somewhere, an article to get rid of it. I mean, it's got to go back in legally. I mean, it was legally voted. We have a pet cemetery. Everything else failed after that, but the vote of the cemetery itself was legal. It was done by the people at a town meeting, the way it was supposed to properly be done. And now it's just sitting there. Well, nobody is ready to do anything with it yet. And I think one of the things we could do is just suggest that it goes out there until we are ready, or until someone is ready, or until other factions bring forward the mechanism to get rid of it. I'm pretty sure the selectmen are not gonna be introducing an article to eliminate it. They're going forward. But I don't think this belongs in this year. Angelo?
It's my understanding that what they're saying is that the entire cost of this project will be borne by people buying cemetery plots, et
Yeah,
cetera.
Right.
the burial ground.
And I think everybody's got to understand that that's what that thought is. And I agree with you that I don't think we're ready to vote on expenditures before we vote on setting up a fund and all of that.
And collecting into the
And
fund.
collecting it. Well, you have to have it, to collect, you have to have people who want to pay because we're going to do it. So my thought is, maybe it's just moving it out 1 or 2 years. You know, maybe just 1 year to get this done, and then start, you know.
I myself, personally, on that note, could settle for 2 years or anything longer, but I'm not gonna just move this a year. I think it needs to go out to be actually voted back in later.
Yeah,
A 2/3 vote, if we're gonna do this, let's make sure people will wanna do it. If we're not gonna do this, let's make sure that happens, but this is what's in front of us now. Where does it belong? I don't think it belongs in year 1. Jack?
2 things, David. One is we have some data that indicates what kind of revenue stream there might be for
Mhm.
this. The second thing is that what you just said at the end there basically nullifies a valid vote. You know, and I think that's something we better take our time and think about, because that's a lot of citizens voted for that. You know?
Right, they voted for a pet cemetery, that's right.
That's right.
So
That's
the
what we're
next
talking
thing, right, and the next thing in my mind that has to happen is you create the funding mechanism, which is this account. And then you start building that account to use it. This article proposes to use it, 131,000 of it, and it hasn't even been created yet.
So, no, I mean that.
I'm not
It's just like,
comfortable, yeah, I know.
you know, the reality is that if that's their projection and it's credible, that that amount of money will be coming in, and they'll use this amount, this portion of that, that could be a viable thing to vote on,
Mhm.
you know?
I
But I'd
just,
rather have a 500,000, no, not because, not for this, but there is money there that is gonna be coming in when they start accepting applications.
right.
And, you know, if it's at a good pace, then they could decide to build it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and I would be more comfortable voting it next May, a year from now, in a special, than I would be voting it this year in this May.
Right. Understand?
You know, if you want to use it the same year that you raise it. Where does anybody else
What do
feel?
others do?
John?
Yes. This is my understanding, so a revolving fund has not been created yet? No
I don't
pets?
remember one, and someone could hit me on the head tomorrow and correct me, but I don't remember it coming out of I have last year's warrant, unless it was done right at the beginning, but I don't remember that.
I don't remember one either. but I
We're
just-
not putting money into a place yet, because all of that, we thought, the town thought it was gonna use perpetual care funds to maintain this property, and all this came after the fact. So now they gotta deal with that, and I think that creating the fund is first. Second. Now, if they put in an article that is going to complete the work that's already been done, and that has a funding source, I don't mind weighing that article. There's gonna be but to have this as the funding source for that article, I'm real uncomfortable with that, but that's just me.
I think that the second half of that reimbursement is to put money back into the cemetery's revolving fund, where the money came out of to pay for the work that was done last year.
Yeah,
I'm thinking
but we
that-
have already done
Yeah.
that. We've
yes.
already put the money back into cemeteries. We did that.
What's this, we're reimbursing somebody here then? It says reimbursement, so.
Well, the money came from health insurance, leftover health insurance money,
Okay.
at the end of the year transactions. So, are we gonna reimburse that? I don't think so.
Okay.
It's not clear to me what these funds are gonna be used for.
Not obligated to reimburse that part.
So, go ahead.
You know,
Angelo.
The only thing that confuses me is that there will be no way that we'll be able to collect the amount of money that's here if people don't know that the project has been approved. Right? Because,
Right.
A, they're not gonna sign up until the project's approved, so I'm just saying that we may wanna make sure that the money isn't spent until enough money is available to do the project. But I think we have to leave in place the project. I think if we move it
Well,
out, you know.
There is gonna be an article. I guess the question in my mind would be whether you're classifying as maintaining that property or whether you classify it as building something there. Whatever, the sidewalks and all that kind of stuff. I don't.
This is not clear. You
Yeah.
know, I think
So,
before we make a decision, maybe
Right.
we need to have some very specific data.
in order to be able to bring Robin back in, we're probably by consensus, or just what I'm hearing, maybe not gonna move this anywhere or anything like that yet. We're gonna wait and see what the article presents to us, maybe, and talk about it
No
as
recommendation pending further information.
something like that.
That's
I
the way
don't
to
think we
do
have
it.
the information.
Okay, all right.
I think, you know, the course of action that you suggested, I think is fine, but I'm not sure that it'd work based on.
Where we are right now.
what might
It's
be
too early
there.
for us
I
to
just don't-
even tell.
I just don't
Yeah.
know.
Right.
Anything else on this one? Okay, just the other items on the, and again, one leads to another here. We have the Arboretum, which is planning money, and then build money.
Right.
That's a whole separate project, a whole separate, different location in town, and a whole different idea.
Right. And it has, in the right columns, it has plan and
And
then.
build.
And then build.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
The crematorium, again,
That's the year out.
that's a year out. Should it be further than that? I think we'll take the two together. If we have a pet cemetery and then the crematorium, If we're moving one out, we're moving the other one out at the same time, I think. If we're keeping both, we're keeping both, I don't know. But it's, I'm not supporting it at this time. And then we have the device itself, that's on there as well. But I would guess we're gonna not vote that tonight. We don't have enough information, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so we can probably bring Robin back in, Bonnie back in, I'm sorry.
Bonnie.
I'll get myself in trouble here.
Yeah.
Somebody else said.
We can bring somebody else in, maybe somebody from the public, all these empty chairs.
They never show up.
I know.
Unless they're access. It's too bad.
What?
Welcome back.
All right. So we're on to the artificial reef.
Is there anybody, who's on CPC on the committee? Is it you?
I was, yeah.
Can you explain to me how the rationale for this under the CPA Act and regulations?
No, I can't.
That one,
Who
no
should I
matter
talk
what, we need further information.
I know I do.
What, the
Yeah,
short,
I mean, I saw that and I said,
I don't want to be combative, but
I mean, it's,
I
I
understand
tried
this
to
one.
think maybe as part of recreation, it would fall under recreation,
You
but
can make the case that you're restoring a recreational area. You could make that case. But it's got to be
That's-
made pretty well,
it's not historic
in my
preservation,
opinion.
it's not housing.
Well, I would be willing to bet that if they're going in this direction, somebody has already done it once before, because very few of them will venture out unless somebody's already done it. At least that's what I've seen in this thing. They've got to have some sort of ruling from somebody that
It
says,
was-
yeah, this is, right, you were there
It
long
was
enough
always
to.
one of the things that I checked on to see if there was any history.
Right,
But then I would also talk to the guy from downtown, say, here's what's being proposed, what do you think, and go back and forth.
right.
And, you know,
I gotta
That
presume
worked-
that's
that
been
process
done, but
worked
we
well.
won't know that until they're in front of us
Yeah.
and ask them,
okay.
Yeah.
right? Okay,
I think this is a recreation thought to protect Red River Beach, et cetera, et cetera.
Engineering, there are two items, one leads to another, one is surface drainage. And that's planning and then do.
Yeah.
Again, we'll have to discuss whether this is just maintenance or this is some other way around maintenance, I think, but. And then the next one, the crossing light shouldn't be on here at all. I did remember the selectmen saying that they would allow the town administrator and myself to get together once and get rid of these so both of our sheets are the same, and get rid of the ones that are under 50,000 and clearly not part of a bigger kind of thing. So this one, I think, will probably disappear, but it's still here right at the moment.
but does it need town approval? This
It,
27?
yes, it will still be an article, no matter what, and the past, the one we did on 39 and the one we did up on,
The bicycle lights?
yeah, this is the
Okay.
crossways to,
Yeah.
the ones we've done in the past have all
Great
been
Western.
separate articles
Okay.
and been approved.
Yeah, Dana, are
Question.
these new crossing lights? Is that what you're
Yes,
proposing?
it's a
Okay.
brand-new
Okay.
spot.
Yep.
I didn't write it down. Does he have the spot on there? On his?
Depot Street.
Depot Street.
Yeah, they've been, when I was on CPC, we approved probably, I'm gonna say either 3 or 4 projects for installing
Yeah.
lights
they-
at different junctions, and you know
Right.
where they're located.
This is one where I got John Giorgio to change his mind on it, because he initially said he didn't think it was kosher.
Who?
John Giorgio, the town attorney,
Oh,
and persuade him that safety is an issue for bike riders out on these intersections, and this could encourage use, and that's how it was justified.
that's been always my view,
Right.
that
Mhm.
it's recreation related
Right.
Mhm.
and it's protecting the bikers.
All right. So that one may disappear. This next one, okay, the next whole group is the facility maintenance. This is stuff that Sean's gone out and identified. Some of it belongs to other departments, but it's all lumped here as one big giant group.
So the compressors for 20,000, is that attached to a bigger plan?
Not at the moment, no. So that, again, some of these under 20, as far as a capital plan item, may disappear.
Right.
Under 50.
Right.
There will still be articles in there supporting them, we'll still talk about them
Right.
that way in terms of funding them, but the biggest one here for this year is the metal roof for highway.
Right.
One interesting note, and we'll look at last year's just for a second. There was, if you look out, the facility maintenance workshop, the workshop facility,
Mm-hmm.
that was on the plan last year under highway, DPW. And it was, I have to find it.
Now it's out
No, it
to the
wasn't under
7th
highway.
year.
It was under somewhere, but it was under for a much smaller amount of money, and it was for like now. And a highway bond, it was for $230,500 for this year. And now,
The bigger
it's
number.
1.2 million for year 7. I don't know what changed there. But that
Inflation?
can't be just
Insurance?
inflation. They gotta have something different in mind, so I think we want to at least, when we have, if, I'll remember it, but when they have them in front of us, we should ask what's going on.
Link does have a plan for what it is and where it is
Yeah.
and what you do with it.
Should ask it the other night in front of the world.
Yeah.
We have the selectmen and the TV and everything.
Well, there'll be more meetings in front of the world. Now our meetings in front of the world. But I just thought it was kind of curious that it went from 230 for this year to nothing, and then 1.2 million year 7. But at least in year 7, it gives it time to percolate, it gives it time to
Go up.
get, kind of finalize them forward and all that kind of
To
stuff.
go up.
All right, highway barn is okay. We're already up to page 2. Townwide radios, part of it's not being recommended anymore. There's something else going on with that. This is under fire. There's some sort of grant going on. There's gonna be some free cash spent under one article, but it's a lot different than it was. That 20,000 that he has on his just showed up, and he has it listed as an under $20,000 item, so, I think even in his mind, he's thinking this is gonna come off the list, but when I talk to him, I'll find out more about that. Auto extraction equipment, that's, $5,000 from free cash and $95,000 coming in a grant for this year. That's a nice ratio, I like that ratio. I'd like to work with the powers to be to do more of those things. Pumper replacement, that's gonna go on the debt schedule. Now, there was a discussion, and I'll just throw this out there, because we gotta think somewhat outside the box here. There was a discussion about the total impact of this, and we have, Proposition 2.5 overrides of $6,860,475 total in this. It's a lot of money compared to when we think about what we hit people with last year, and how much of that is coming on this year. There's a lot of borrowing gonna happen this year, and the first payments for the tech school are gonna come on this year as well, and those are just gonna go up till they finish it. Maybe this might be a year we put less into our stabilization and less into OPEB or something, and we pay for this. Just a thought.
The flesh is willing.
We'll see.
The spirit says no.
Well, we just building stabilization to build it, or are we gonna buy something with it when we need it?
We will know it when we see it, believe me.
All right, well, I'm gonna bring that up when we get to it,
Well,
so
I'll be right there.
the two of us can get in the corner and bang heads and see where we end up. Angela,
I just lost you. Where are you? Are you on Pumper?
Pumper.
pumper truck replacement.
Yeah.
600,000 debt.
It strikes me that the pumper is one of the more important things we have in this town. And I think the only reason we do it this way is because everybody recognizes that and will vote for it. I wonder what happens if you do that $600,000 with free cash, and it takes some of the things that are difficult to vote for, and you put that up for a vote.
That's why I'm only proposing to risk something that doesn't hurt us, basically. We've been putting more money than we ever have into the stabilization account, ever,
You were
right?
the source, I was just getting the way you're doing it, that's all.
You know, that, and it's proposed that we'll put 500,000 in this year. Well, maybe we put 100,000 in and we put 400 towards this pumper or something like that.
As you know, this is the first cut at it by Chris. And
That's
he
true.
always starts high, ends up with nothing,
Right?
most of the time.
And we'll see where we end up this year. So that's my first cut at it, to just food for thought.
Concur.
All right,
Priming the pump.
priming the pump, yeah, priming the pumper. And I also have a question about whether the ladder truck in year 24, FY 24, not this year, next year, the year after, the year after, the year after that, if that's the most appropriate vehicle now. Let's have that discussion with the fire department. Is a Quince or some other type of vehicle that we don't know about? They bought a very unique pumper this year when they replaced the last pumper. As it turns out, all three pumpers kind of went in the same kind of time frame, in a short time frame, so they're replacing them. But the one that they bought this time around is a lot different than the one they just bought. Maybe something like that is coming forward in the ladder trucks. Jack?
On the air pack replacements, which is not in this year,
Right?
they're showing 421. Do we have any knowledge about when the next time they're gonna be coming back for another 400 for air pack replacements?
No, but I also,
Because I think those are important questions,
yeah,
all these numbers.
we can get that answer. I think that they were talking about that, yeah, they're talking about that as a possible grant, or at least a good portion of that being a grant. So, and that's what they were talking about it last year. And they moved it ahead because the people who are working on the allocation of the money are thinking about what kind of pack they want. I guess there's a couple of different systems out there, and that's the holdup, not anything else. So they moved it back. It was in last year's, year one. Now it's in this year's, year two, so they put it back a couple years. But good question, we will definitely ask them. The next group, golf. Everything is coming out of golf funds. Is any problems or areas anybody want to discuss there?
Just,
I think a great idea.
just the thing that the selectmen brought up on Monday is that $250,000 for the electrical tie-in. Where
Right,
that's
that
from.
might throw this all asunder.
Right.
Or it might be something that we just say, all right, we blew it when we did the cart barn without looking ahead enough to.
Well, that begs a good question. I mean,
Yeah.
a very basic question you ask is,
How did
what your
we miss
electrical
that?
load is that?
Yeah.
So someone is responsible for that.
You know, you look out and you see this little skinny wire that goes 6 telephone poles, and you
Yeah.
say, wow, we're gonna load it up.
Right. I mean,
Glows in the dark now.
we spent a lot of money for a design consultant on that building.
Yeah.
And that's a very basic question to be asked.
Why do we lease our mowing equipment, not own it?
It's actually, we go through it fast enough that it's actually more beneficial to us. This started way back in the 90s. The case was made for it, and it
Okay.
still holds today. Hello, do you have something for us, or are you just coming to visit? Nothing you'd like to say or add? Would you like to join us here at the table and talk in a microphone? Sure,
Seat right
sure.
here for her.
No, we'd love to hear from you and tell us what you're thinking. We're kind of right now in the part of the agenda where we're just kind of going through the capital plan items. But maybe one synopsis on the benefits of maybe borrowing short-term versus long-term on some things, or anything like that you can shed? We are being recorded now these days, so you can introduce yourself and have some fun.
Sure. My
Thanks
name's
for
Carol
coming.
Capola. I'm the finance director here for the town of Harwich. So short-term versus long-term borrowing. And that all depends, right? Depends on what the interest rates are, depends on what they're moving in the future. I can tell you that we have had some pretty in-depth conversations regarding when we're going to go out and sell bonds. We have Cranberry Valley, we have the fire station, we have perhaps Lower County Road, we're not sure yet. And then there's a ladder truck and some other items that are being considered in this capital plan. So we've held discussions about where are interest rates going. Are we better off to go out and sell the bonds in June, once the project, if the project's approved, especially Lower County, because it's a pretty big project. We did sell $12.5 million worth of bonds last June, and we had a great interest rate on those. And
That was for sewage, sorry,
that was for a number of projects.
Okay.
So anywhere from Saquatucket, that was a large portion of that debt. There were some sewer projects in there, and then there were some other smaller ones that the town had borrowed short-term and was renewing the bond anticipation notes. So you know, you may want the flexibility with short-term notes. Short-term notes give you flexibility. Long-term doesn't. General obligation debt doesn't. So you may want the flexibility when the interest rates are low. And so I say it all depends, but it depends on what the market's doing.
And do you, I know the selectmen talked about this quite a bit Monday night. Do you have a sense of what we have right now that we've authorized and is gonna hit this year that you think, without anything else being voted?
Yes. So for FY20,
Yeah.
we're estimating that that's going to increase, and there's some final decisions that are gonna get made with regard to whether the Lower County Road's gonna be funded at where it is in the capital plan, is it gonna be reduced? You know, there's lots of discussions that are going on right now. But right now, I've preliminarily budgeted for that first debt payment of that Lower County Road. That, and with the bonds that we just sold in June, it's increasing the debt service for the general fund. So your debt's going to increase about $1.2 million next year.
And we have still more authorized that
Oh,
we
yes.
haven't. So have you got that number?
I have it. Do you want me to run and get it for you? I have it right downstairs.
Maybe,
I would be happy to do it.
I think that's a great number for us to have, to know what's,
Absolutely.
because just before you walked in, we were talking about the pumper, $600,000, and whether this might be a year we just buy it, just not have that obligation. I mean, we're putting a lot on the taxpayers. We've got a lot more to go, and we've got a tech school being built that you probably don't have any numbers, or maybe you do. Okay, if you want, that would be very helpful to us. We'll just keep plodding along and, right?
It's been my understanding that
Jack?
in the long run, deferring things is not a good strategy in the hope of getting better numbers later. It's like, you know, just because I shot sevens a minute ago doesn't mean I can shoot them again. And, you know, we consistently miss on capital spending, not on the plan, but on how much something's gonna cost. Trying to predict which way the market's gonna go, the financial market. You know, people spend their whole lives trying to figure that out. We're not capable of that ourselves. So,
We were talking about the mowing equipment and lease. How is that a capital expenditure?
That's probably a better question. I don't have the right off the top of my head answer for that one, other than to say it was a fairly big number for 1 year.
In the charter, we define capital outlay as the acquisition, construction, or renovation of buildings, equipment, or land.
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm just saying.
Angela?
To go back on the $250,000 that was brought up before, I think seriously that the golf department will generate that amount of money as long as we don't put it into free cash next year. So I think they can easily do that.
Right, on the other part there, as far as the question on
And this question.
a
I
lease being
understand.
on there,
Yeah, lease.
you know, maybe it shouldn't be on there. I've said all along that I make the Cliff Notes version of the plan, but this is a real good planning document, the one that the town administrator gives us. And from a,
It's more complete.
right, from a transparency point of view, it's good to identify something that's gonna be $87,000 a year for 5 years, right up front and show everybody. Whether it ends up on the final document that town meeting votes on, I don't know. It may be that we just put it in maybe a budget item, it may be we're funding it some other way, but,
So it's kind of like a plan, but it's not really
yeah,
capital.
the document is a plan, whether we say, okay, we're not gonna put leases in there, as part of the actual capital plan, so forth. But from a working document,
Yeah,
I would
understand.
rather have it all, you know, some people have
Okay.
said we don't need to see CPC things in there, because they're being paid. Well, I think we do, you know, we do want to know these things. We want to know the ones that are coming up if we can, so,
Well, we're going to talk about the capital plan
yeah.
later.
All right, you're back on, you back here, you ready?
So the town has a number of debt issuances that were authorized, that have been authorized and have not been issued yet. And those range from road projects that we actually pay down short-term notes on those, which we are allowed to do. So instead of taking on long-term debt for all of the road projects, we're about $700,000 a year, with I think one exception where the town voted a smaller amount. We pay down that debt about $100,000 on each one of those. So we'll never, we don't anticipate ever having to go out to the market to sell the long-term bonds for those projects. And then there's other smaller projects like Witchmere Pier that was a project that the town undertook, and that we're doing pay downs on those too. That's what those are called. So we'll borrow short-term and then we'll pay down the principal on those. So again, we don't have to take on the long-term debt. It is the intention, right now anyway, that the town pays down the design and architectural work for the fire station planning. That was $310,000. We're gonna pay that down over 5 years. We're intending to start that this year. So there are a number of projects that are authorized and unissued.
Now, what, just sorry to interrupt, but what does that do tax-wise? In other words, the people have voted for those, they've raised their taxes to do these things, so the additional money is coming in, and we're just paying it in-house?
Right, so we're paying.
How does that, on a debt, how does that reduce the tax rate?
Because you're paying lesser amount in interest.
Okay,
It's your interest costs, and you haven't paid the debt issuance costs either. And
Okay.
every time you issue debt, it's very expensive.
yeah,
It's about, between the bond rating agencies and the financial advisor, it's probably around $50,000 to issue long-term debt, which is expensive.
so the town's ability to do some of these things in-house is actually a benefit to the
Yeah.
taxpayer.
Yes, I mean,
Just
we're
wanted
still
to-
paying, if we have a very large ban that we're going to go out to the market to sell, we will get and it's in the best interest of the town sometimes, to get a Standard & Poor's rating, but they're a lot less expensive than they are if you're going out to the market to sell long-term bonds.
Okay.
So that's really typically the savings. So the total amount that the town currently has as authorized and unissued is,
Everybody's ready to write.
The over-under on.
I got 16.
$27. That's all.
sorry, I'm
I
sorry.
got 16 million.
Let's see. No, I'm not gonna be able to get- I will get it to you, but hold on one second.
It's gotta be scary.
It's really
There's a
not.
lot of yellow over there.
That'd be scary.
I'm just gonna need to get to the right page. Okay. So, we don't want to forget that we voted, or the town voted about $25 million, right, in wastewater, right? I don't wanna-
Last year was a year we're gonna remember for a long time.
So, the current, authorized and unissued debt is $43,445,149.
That's both short-term and long-term?
Well, that's authorized and unissued.
Authorized,
So some
to
of
be
that we
determined.
have short-term notes on,
Right.
because, you know, it's a requirement that you can't spend any money unless you have some funding to support that. So you can't go out and spend $6 million on a fire station if you don't have any money to, you know, you have to borrow in either state house notes or short-term bonds.
You have to have a source.
That's correct.
And we have $43 million worth of sources.
But no, we haven't had to borrow all of that yet.
Okay.
A lot of that.
It's a sewer project that hasn't been,
So
not
what-
digging yet.
Right, so what I do is I go out to all of the departments or CDM Smith, let's say, and I work with them closely to say, what are you gonna spend every quarter? And so that we only wanna borrow the money that we have to borrow, because we have to pay interest on it. Even if that interest rate is low, we still have to pay interest on it. So we only wanna borrow what we need to borrow at, you know, particular time. So of that money, there's, I think we have $7 million right now in outstanding short-term loans.
Carol, when I was going through the audited financial statements in the annual report, I seem to recall seeing a schedule in there that talks about debt authorized.
There is.
Okay.
That's for already, that we're
Already-
already paying, yeah.
The year
Yes.
ended last year.
Yes, and we just received our comprehensive annual financial report for FY18, and that should be on the website.
Thank you.
But if the committee would like a copy of it, I'm happy to give you copies.
Angela, we can get off the website. Angela?
Can I ask a question about the difference between long-term and short-term for a second? My concern is very simple. If we borrow $100,000 and we borrow it for 10 years, it costs the town $10,000 a year that we have to charge to our residents. If we borrowed $100,000 and did it over 20 years, we now only have to charge our residents, about $50,000. And if the thing that we've purchased is gonna last for 20 or 30 years, there are gonna be people over time who will be benefiting from that particular purpose. I don't know why we borrow, except if we need it cash up front, short term. I mean, I wouldn't buy a house and borrow the money, you know, for 5 years so I could spend, you know, $100 million a year. I borrow it for 30 years if that's what they give it to me. I don't know why we don't do that. I just get lost in that. Yes, the total bill for that 30 years is going to be longer than the total bill if you did it in 10 years. But the people who are involved paying the bill will be paying less. And so I don't understand why we do that to our residents,
So
if we're doing that.
that's a conversation that I had earlier today with the financial advisor. Can you imagine that?
I'm sorry.
No, it's.
Her timing today was impeccable.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you that sewer is out to the maximum amount of years, and I believe that's, what we have is our, because this is kind of our model out for the next, like, 60 years.
So sewering is maxed.
Taking it out to the max. We can only take useful life of design portion of it out to a certain number of years.
understand that.
But the construction portion of it, we've taken it right out to the maximum amount. It's the same thing with the fire station and for these, like Saquotucket Harbor. We've taken that out to the maximum amount of time that we can. Some of that Saquotucket Harbor had to be split into different projects depending on the useful life. And this Board of Selectmen are required to vote on the useful life, which they do. When I say short-term bans, like road projects, we could take them out 10 years. You could pay down short-term notes over 10 years. So we can't take it out more than the useful life of the either equipment or the project. But to my knowledge, we are managing the debt we're trying to balance two schools of thought. The school of thought that says, you know, I'm not going to be here in 20 years probably to appreciate the work that's being done at Cranberry Valley. I'm just making this up, okay, because Cranberry Valley is self-supported, okay. But I'm not going to be here to enjoy the fire station in 20 years, so why can't they take that debt out to 40 or 50 years? And then there's the other school of thought of let's get the debt paid off as soon as possible because we know all these other projects are going to come forward and we have infrastructure needs and so on and so forth. So we're trying to manage and balance appropriately, but that is a conversation that I just had this morning with the financial advisor.
And what did they advise?
But I can assure you at sewer, we're taking it out as long as we possibly can.
What was their advice?
There's two schools of thought. I mean, that's how I started the conversation, that's how we ended it.
Okay. Question?
I think from a fiduciary standpoint, we have to borrow money in the most cost-effective way.
There have been times, and I remember, I almost think it was on the middle school, it's just, I was on recreation at the time, but the selectmen did vote on one thing to accelerate it rather than wait. They wanted to get it over with. And it is a decision that the policy makers make. You just hope that they get all the good information to be able to make the right one. But it does make a difference in terms of what the people are pulling out of their pocket every year.
I'm sure.
And does the 43 million that you talked about, does that include the tech school?
So the 43 million,
Just a question.
but I just want to clarify, I want to make you aware, and I'm sure you already are aware of this, that the SRF loans for wastewater is coming in at a 0%. So you may want to take that out over a longer period of time, because you're not paying interest on it.
2-3 million years.
2 or 3 million years.
Clock it.
I'm sorry.
Stay away. Move in a minute.
Nice to get through the next page they have.
Yeah. This is also good too.
Oh, absolutely.
I love worksheets.
Especially ones that are
That's
20 by
massive.
27 and 30 by 45. Here's a briefcase, it's actually 2 sheets of plywood with a handle.
They've actually started to work at the tech school. I drove up there the other day, to level the land.
Oh, the buses had to move, I know that.
I believe that
Moving right along up there.
does not,
It's not,
does not,
it's not in there,
it's not
okay.
in that number.
Okay.
But I have the schedule.
It seems to me that the superintendent last year said it would be some sort of number hitting in 20. The first number would start to hit us in 20. It wouldn't be the final number, but
So they sold the bonds.
600 something thousand?
They sold the bonds. They've decided on a different structure on those bonds. based on a vote of all of the communities that what came to the table, so town administrators and finance directors. So they sold 20-year bonds. They received an interest rate of, the actual interest rate was 3.32%. So the debt service for Harwich, and I can forward the schedule to you if you'd like it. The first year payment is $895,367.
What's the
Is that
total
our
cost?
percentage, Carol? Or-
Yes, the town's percentage, the town of Harwich's percentage for next year is 11.75%. But the total for the Harwich,
The total cost for the TEX project?
Well, before MSBA or after MSBA funding?
After.
$80,770,607.
And the SBA was 40-something, or?
46,292, 274, that's estimated. That's a maximum reimbursement that they could.
Can you help me with the acronym? MS?
Massachusetts School Building
Thank you.
Authority.
Thank you.
Let me just
Andrew?
be persistent and pay.
They got money for
I
us.
do that well.
They got money
How
for
long do
us.
you think the building's gonna last? 30 years?
Yeah, they could have taken the debt out 30 years, but the vote came in and.
I'm not worried, I understand why the vote came in and who was taking the vote. If we did 30 years, can you just quickly divide that through and add, no.
Probably something you want a sidebar on that one.
Yeah, what I'm saying is if you.
I have a schedule that I could.
Yeah,
provide.
and, you know, and I think the number's gonna be significantly lower. It's gonna be significantly lower, that's all the point I'm trying to make.
Same thing
You
with
can-
On
mine.
a yearly basis.
On a yearly basis.
Yeah, long term it won't be long.
But
Okay.
the long-term, whole different group of people who are enjoying that school will
We
be
take
here.
it, yeah, I understand.
That's what the deal is.
Jack has a question.
Send us the debt, your debt document.
This document?
The debt schedule of
Debt
what's
schedule.
already, what comes off each year for the next several years.
For the town?
Yeah.
If we could get that, that would be helpful. We'll get around to everybody.
We're finalizing everything as we speak,
Yeah.
so I should expect to have that next week.
But we're likely to throw a monkey wrench into that anyways, or at least discuss it anyways.
Can't be done,
We
right?
thank you for coming. We thank you for the information, and it was very timely, and thank you.
And I'm sorry to be a pest.
It will get worse, don't worry.
Okay,
Perfect.
Harbor Master.
We were talking about the Harbor Master next.
Yep.
There's 2 projects there, and one is Wixon Docks. I was a selectman when we accepted that lovely gift to the town.
And probably gonna take care of it.
I can understand that.
I thought somebody bought that,
So that's the
Building.
fish, that's the fish, the
Right.
shellfish hatchery.
Yeah.
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 That's next to it.
This is
Different.
next to it,
Different.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then the jetty construction. That's another one where we plan and then build. I think it's too quick to do another big project like that, but I'm sure we'll discuss that as
Which one was that, what was that, Dana?
Jetty.
2 million.
Allen
2
Harbor
million.
Jetty, 57,000 this year to plan for 2 million next year,
Oh, yeah,
you know? That, I think it was that one was, I just want to be sure I say it correctly. That one was in FY '22 last year, and it's in FY '21, the $2 million part for this year. So it's moved up a year, and I don't know. So it took 2 years that were $5 million apiece, more or less, on the capital plan, and it took one of them and turned it into a 7 and the other into a 3. And I don't know, I would want to hear more about why that's now instead of later. 5 is much better than 7 and 3, I think, but,
I can tell you there's a greater concern that of what's happening to the harbor,
okay.
and what it's been doing. So I know that's one of the issues.
Yeah, I'm not saying,
Yeah.
I want to hear about it, I want to get the details.
As far as degrading the harbor, you mean?
It's
Yeah.
right, it's degrading the entrance to the
Right.
harbor
Yeah.
and taking sand and putting it in the wrong spot, creating a
Right.
major problem.
Right.
The number of people from the Capital Outlay Committee took a ride on the boat to take a look at that, and also the Herring River jetty, which has to be one of these days redone also. And they were concerned at what they were looking at.
That moves a big number forward, is all I know.
Mm-hmm. No, it does, but if there's a need,
Yeah,
you
Right.
know,
we'll hear.
yep.
Anything else on the harbors?
Well, then another big number was added in '26, 1.5 million, so.
Yeah, at the
Fiscal
top.
Yeah,
26.
okay.
Yeah,
That's another big number coming
Yeah.
down.
bulkhead.
Well, I mean, the
advertising.
harbors have always had some
Yeah.
big ticket items kind of
Right.
deal. It just seems like we're,
A lot
we're
of,
in, we're in a span, we're doing a lot of them. When I was, back in the 90s, it seemed like water had those, the water department coming at us, too many, too quick kind of deal. You just kind of get a sense that,
I would suggest that if the borrowing was on a long enough term for there, that the harbor masters would be able, the harbors would be able to pay for their own claims.
but if we're stacking them up too quickly, they can't.
No, they can't,
Yeah,
I'm saying
yeah,
that
yeah.
if we spread it out, and they would know, because they know what their numbers are, they're pretty relatively constant,
Yeah,
what they can do,
okay.
if they use all of their revenue.
Next, we're gonna talk about the Brooks Library sidewalk repair. Anybody have anything on that at all they wanna say? Okay,
It's a bumpy sidewalk. I know.
free
Okay,
cash.
it is, yeah.
Next is housing, and there's a CPC request and then a local plan update. Two big numbers, but more or less available funds. And then it disappears forever, by the looks of things.
Yep.
And that's,
I'm kind of surprised to see that, because that housing.
well,
trust-
actually,
That
that
housing
was,
trust was
when we
established
talked
last
Monday
year,
night with the
yeah.
selectmen, that was one of the things that I'm starting to see with the CPC stuff is their first year comes in, but their ongoing kind of thoughts don't get reflected. And the orphan buildings are that way. If they have a project this year, it's on there, but if they don't have a project, you know, we don't know which one's gonna need a roof next, we don't know which one's gonna need whatever next. We should
Well,
have those projections anyway, as a planning tool, as part of the planning document, we should have those projections.
Sean has that plan, I know he does.
Yeah,
I'm not saying you've,
yeah,
anybody has
he's-
seen it, but I know he has that plan.
he's working on it, is what
Yeah.
the town administrator
Yeah.
told me,
Yeah,
but
well,
I guess we'll have to see it. All the police stuff is under 50 and will probably disappear. So I think we can turn the page. Which gets us to the 5-year road maintenance. Again, we're talking about, doing some with Chapter 90 and putting the rest as debt. We seem to have a real good formula for taking care of that debt. Again, if we don't feel like paying down on the pumper, maybe this is an area we pay down, but just a thought. And then we've got the big one, which is really the only one that could move, that could really make a difference, but there's probably not enough onus to move it, is the Lower County Road one. In my opinion, we've done too much pre-work on this to now say, let's move it out of here. It just doesn't make sense. We've got all the water hookups done, we've redone all the piping, we've got it all torn up now. If we don't go ahead and fix it now, it's gonna be a long dusty summer, and I don't think people would be very happy with that myself. So even though this is the one that would make the biggest impact on the plan as far as this year's total amount debt, it's also in my view, one of the least movable ones. But
well, the problem is,
Jack,
can you, whenever we finally decide to do it, can we afford it at that point? Just because you delay it doesn't mean it goes away,
right,
hopefully,
right.
you know?
Yep,
You gotta pay your bills.
we do. And then everything else is coming out of free cash, and it's vehicles and bodies and trailers and those types of things that we normally buy out of free cash anyways. Last year, the highways had on the plan differently, and they had a pretty aggressive vehicle listing out there, and this number matches what they had, so I don't have a problem with what's showing there. Anything else on highways?
What is chapter 90, for the listening audience out there, what is chapter 90 money?
It's state highway money, it
State.
comes from the gas tax. And they dole it out to us.
Sparingly.
We wish there was more. Next is recreation and youth. They have one project that's under the 50, and then they've got 3 other projects going on. 2 of them, they're looking for CPC funds. One of them is an article I'm certainly going to be able to talk about, and that's the sand pond improvements, but we'll get to that one later. And then the Pleasant Road parking lot. They're kind of going through the parking lots one at a time, the very same way we did the bathrooms.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll probably see a new parking lot each year with some sort of number attached to it. Would be nice, I know when we did the bathrooms, we lined up all 9 of them that had to be done and said to the selectmen, we can do them one a year this way, or you can do one big bond and do them all, and they chose to do them one a year. I would like to see the same kind of thing with this. Let's line them up and see what the number is and show, because you see, you know, this one's on here, but there's nothing after it.
Yeah.
But we know they sat in front of us and told us that that's what they're planning to do. They're planning to do one a year for, and they've done a couple already. Let's find out what we're facing here, you know. It's great that it's all CPC funds, but let's, you know, what's the rack up? What if CPC isn't, what if we make a change in that? Some towns are starting to vote that, part of that money to go to other uses, you know. Somebody might come up with a future request for that, not me.
You should think about it, though.
Yeah,
The Capital Outlay Committee said that if CPC did not approve this,
they're not going forward with it.
they would not recommend going forward.
Right.
Not approving one.
And that's not necessarily correct either, I don't
They're not
think, you know.
approving one.
For a whole host of reasons, but that's.
Yeah, they did come right out and say that.
They're not approving one.
Which one?
They're not gonna support these
Cash.
CPC items with coming out of cash or anything like that. If CPC doesn't support them, they're not gonna support them. So, you know, that's part of the discussion we should have when we're talking about this plan and how it's working. And just a real, at the end, I'll give you an update on where we are with the meetings going forward on the capital plan. Wastewater, real easy this year. 100 grand. And that's partially to fund a person out of the budget, and then partially to, for expenses. So that'll be an article, we'll talk about it. It's a person.
But wouldn't that be every year going forward though, too? Or it can't be just for 1 year?
Yeah.
That's part of the discussion, whether it would move into the budget for us after that, or, I mean, the budget portion of, if the town administrator can fit that in, then the budget portion would just go forward. But the first time, he's identifying it as something that's out there. I mean, it used to be the practice that every time a new person came along, we would put it in an article separate. That hasn't always been the case lately, but the selectmen used to do that. Jack?
And in theory, in terms of project management, if this person really knows their stuff, they can save us a lot of money,
Yeah, they're gonna pay
both
for
by smart
themselves.
ideas, but
Mhm.
also by watching out for errors. That costs you more and more money every time, every delay you have.
And that's the theory with any project manager,
Yeah,
that
this is
they
crucial.
don't overall cost you money.
And I think as a committee, we should be supportive of this because there were people that didn't want that.
Yeah.
That's a mistake.
Question?
Yes.
Is it typical to have head count on the, like, new heads on the capital plan?
No,
Okay, I'm just curious.
definitely not.
Yeah, it seems odd to me to be on this
You
document.
can reread that definition 100 times, and it
Yeah.
doesn't say anything about people. But
Yeah.
in this particular case, this is where this item of $100,000 is showing up.
Free cash is another, if you read this free cash, it shouldn't be free cash either.
Not free and it's not cash, right?
Well, so this is.
Okay, and then the next whole group is water,
Yay.
water department. And we have already heard from the town administrator that they have some changes coming up because of what's going on in Lothrop. And these numbers are gonna change, but the funding source isn't gonna change and the amount that they can spend isn't gonna change. So it will be some go up and some go down kind of deal. And that gets us to $12 million. And just to recap, 162 of this is proposed to come from the budget. 1.5 million, 1497 is supposed to come from free cash. CPC has got 685 million. The Water Enterprise Fund is about 500,000, 505. Golf is 247,000. Perpetual Care Funds is 30,000, and Pet Cemetery Revolving Fund, which we've talked about, is 131. Chapter 90 is 700,000. Grants, 95,000. Proposed debt, $6,860,475. And the biggest one of that is the $5,560,475 project for Lower County Road. So $1 million of that is $1 million more is not. And then not recommended right at the moment, but on the plan is 1.2 million.
Is that included in the 12 million or excluded? That's not recommended.
That's part of the 12 million.
Yeah.
In other words, it's a check for me.
Yeah.
This number and this number are both added up separately, and they match. So I've done it. Yeah, I was lucky. I threw a dart in there, that's where it landed.
Not
But, you know, the Cliff Notes just are a little bit easier to read, but it is a double check. You know, the first time that the town administrator and I both sat down and did it separately, we found a $30 million difference in what we had done, and it turned out to be a formula item, and he fixed it, and it's all set, so we match.
Until now, nobody knew.
It's just $30 million out of a plan. But this will make sure that town meeting this year is not looking for over 100 million like we were last year. It's looking for a much smaller number. So do we want to take any action on this plan, or are we still waiting? I think we came up with enough questions tonight that
Hold.
Oh, yeah.
we're pretty much holding the thing.
Yes.
I don't think there's any reason to go for it right now.
No.
Right.
No.
No. You may, certainly.
Along with the water department, I believe that you will see a change to Lower County Road as well, which I believe it's going to be a reduction. I just don't have the exact dollar amount at this
Okay.
point in time, but I think it's gonna be a significant reduction.
Oh, great.
And then is that due to some sort of construction environment, or is that due to doing stuff in-house more, or
Well,
what?
the final bids should be coming in shortly. I was in touch with the DPW director today. And then they're going to take, their plan is, preliminary plan, is to take some of the road money that they have in that $1.4 million to support a portion of Lower County. Not all of it, they need road money, they have
Yeah,
roads they need
yeah.
to fix. But they're trying to, you know, get that number down so that it's more palatable.
Right. And this, you know, after last year, this is definitely a year to try and do stuff like that. And that's part of the discussion we'll have going on with the rest of this, is what we do with it, you know. Thank you. And again, if you can't find, I'll send it out again, it's easy enough to do, but the spreadsheet that I send you that has 20 on it also has 19 on it. So if you want to compare the two back side by side, you can do that and see what we voted last year and what we voted this year. It's a working document, it moves all the time. Jack?
Could you do version numbers of these these sheets, you know?
I
so-
do date them.
I know, but sometimes toward the end of the year, you can get 2 or 3 of those in a couple days
Right.
and lose track of where things are.
Yes,
He sent me
definitely.
110, he said that was the
Do you
list.
remember that? That's the right sheet.
No, I'll remember that, yep. Definitely makes sense. Anything else on the capital plan?
Dana, could I
Yes.
get the bigger copy like everyone else has? I don't have this larger copy, just
Yeah,
have the
I
small one.
actually don't, I didn't keep one for myself either. Do you,
Is it on the computer? Email's fine, that's perfectly fine.
I don't have everybody's address, but I
Okay.
just emailed it to you.
all right, that'd be great.
Perfect,
You're referring to.
If you send
Yes,
it, yeah,
please.
if you send it to me, I'll get it to everybody else.
that'd be great, thank you.
All right?
You got a printer that can print that out?
Yeah,
That,
just Scotch
I'll
tape.
just look
This
at it
is-
online.
This is what it looks like when you print it out on regular paper.
Yeah,
If you can read that, you're younger than
Yeah.
all of us.
yeah, no.
You can stop and see Sandy downstairs, she'll print it out.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
Sandy
yeah.
will,
Right,
okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I got a
Okay.
big printer.
All right, we're gonna move on.
You said the first thing we're supposed to do.
The next item on the agenda is our workshop, which means we won't be taking any votes on the next item. It's just a discussion for us to have, and I thought it would be the first time to start talking about the budget, because we've spent quite a bit of time talking about the capital plan, and we've got more to go, but pretty soon we're gonna start getting caught up with the budget. I know a week from,
Real money.
yeah, yeah. A week from now is MMA, and I know you're going. Anybody, you're going? I'm going. Anybody else going to MMA? No? Okay. We usually get better and more information up there, which I can't wait to get and bring down and pass around. But just 2 quick things on the budget to start us off. I did kind of print out the thing, I think you originally sent me this on free cash. It's part of a packet that you sent me at one point, and it just tells definition and how free cash comes about. There are 6 things that make up free cash. Most of them are smaller, but the 2 biggest ones are leftover money from budgets. So if you budget $100 and they spend $90, $10 becomes free cash at a future point. And then estimated receipts is probably the other biggest bucket of the buckets. Estimated receipts is when you estimate $100 and the actual receipt comes in from golf at $110, that extra $10 becomes free cash, to simplify it. But those are your bigger bucket. This document here is the recap sheet, and it basically tells you what we had in FY 2018 and how it changed up to FY 2019. And it will change again for FY 2020. Get Barbara Walters in here to say that. So the tax levy limit this year is $49,437,000, the year that we're in right now. So that's gonna go up by, if we allow it, mandatory 2.5%, which isn't mandatory, but it seems to always go up. And you can see last year it was at 46.7. So when it talks about what does the town administrator have to be able to pay for increased costs, that's his biggest bucket. That's where the most money comes in. And the next biggest one is right underneath it, local receipts. You can see that local receipts, and that's all your revenues from all the different sources, and there is a spreadsheet on all of those. Some of it's taxes, like excise tax and things like that, hotel taxes and all those kinds of things. So the tourist industry is helping us there. And other of it is all the things that we charge for, and people are always saying, why don't we raise the fees on that? Or why don't we cut the fees on that, and so forth. And you can see that it was $11 million last year and $12 million this year, 12.7. Yes,
Can I ask Carol a question?
I think so. Try it.
Are we gonna be are we estimating the short-term rental revenue now that that's been approved by the state?
New state tax.
You might as well get the microphone so people can hear you. We can actually put a nameplate there for you. I think that would be a,
Very timely conversations, because we just had this conversation yesterday. And we had
is that
it-
all you do is have a conversation? No.
We had it with the town of Chatham, and so the town administrator and I haven't talked about this yet. Our next meeting is tomorrow, but the town of Chatham has said that they are going to refrain from, because they don't have a means to estimate it. So
Okay.
you don't know how many rental properties are in your community, and I understand real estate firms can help you with that.
So Harwich you don't permit short-term rentals? Okay, that's the issue, yeah.
You do, does Eastham do that?
Eastham, you have to have a permit to rent, so we know we know there's some that go under the table. But, yes, so we have a count of 1,300 homes that are rented in the summer. And so 3% on that.
So maybe it's changed, but I know that we used to, on our estimated receipts, estimate the number that we collected the previous year in terms of, we never said, oh, this is a new revenue coming in,
Right.
we're gonna add it in and hopefully get it. We used to know that we could get it before we, and that
It's a
probably has, yeah, it's a conservative approach, and you can't go under. You can't estimate $100 and only bring in 90,
Right.
because you have to make up that other
Right.
10. So,
That would probably be a good idea, though, for the town to start looking at permitting.
well,
rentals.
in talking, again, Mark and I were at a meeting with Sarah Peak, and she said, some towns can use this to actually lower their taxes with.
That's right.
Or a portion of it. What are you gonna do with it?
Right.
That's part of one of the recommended uses of this money. How do we go about doing that? And that would be taking one of these numbers and not projecting it as much. So certainly a discussion.
I thought you were required to have a permit to rent your home. I know I rented my home before I moved down here, and I had to get a permit downstairs, so, to
From
have people
Harwich?
in Harwich, yes.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm just not aware. I'm not aware of
Occupancy
that as a
permit or
revenue
something like
source.
that. Yeah, I had to get one.
I don't,
The health department has something.
Because they have to do an inspection
Yeah,
Yes.
to make sure it meets state
I'm not sure
regs.
everybody does.
Yeah,
People may not do it, correct.
there's
That's right.
probably, my guess is that there's probably a lot of information out there, but like Chatham, we may not be in a position yet to be able to say, it's this much revenue we're gonna project from in May.
Right.
Because that's when you spend it, basically, so.
I'm not aware of a permit that is required. You may-
Occupancy permit or
well,
something.
that's-
I've never heard of it.
It's a rent, yeah.
I had to
An
get it.
occupancy permit is
I remember getting
required
it.
in any property,
Mhm.
so,
Right.
so that wouldn't be specific. to-
For short-term rental.
In the finance office for
Right.
short-term rental, we would, include it in, just like health inspections, we include them in with all the health inspections. So I may be speaking out of term, and I will
Right.
find that out for
Yeah.
you.
No worries.
Like, if there's taxes available and whatnot, I think we probably should
Right.
do what we thought we were doing.
Well, the state is giving 3% back to us on our cherry sheet. And the local towns can vote to approve that up to 6%. So that's cash on the table for us.
Maybe they can pay for all the wastewater.
And we haven't voted that yet, the selectmen in Howard
No,
have not.
Eastham is voting to leave it for the 3% as it is for now. And next year revisit.
Curious, what triggered Eastham to initiate that permit process, and how do they enforce it?
They've had it in place, well, I've been there 7 or 8 years, and it's been there well before then. It's enforced by, they will periodically check the internet for rentals, and see if they've got it, check Airbnb, they will check the papers, you know,
So it's,
neighbors
by-
don't hesitate to report,
I was gonna say.
especially people that are
Especially on
going,
Saturday nights.
well, especially people that rent their 3-bedroom to like
80
12 people, yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Jack has a question.
Yeah,
I had one of those.
So a town would be smart if they made sure people understood that the people are responsible for reporting.
mm-hmm,
They
And-
can't just say, I'll wait till they knock on my door. They are
Developed a
responsible.
me-
And develop a
mechanism to do
system
that.
that'll back that up.
Well, I mean, if you're gonna create a permitting system, you'd have to, in my view, include some kind of sanctioning process if you don't have a permit.
Exactly.
Well, the Department of Revenue just posted on their website the rules
Right.
for this. That's something brand new, and people can go there and find out whether they qualify or not to have to report this, and how it's done and those kind of things. But
One-
it's all brand new, I know
one
that.
thing though to clarify with Eastham is just putting in municipal water.
Yeah.
Okay, so they've never had municipal water, they don't have sewer. They have a very sensitive environmental concern, and their aquifer is really impacted because of that. So it behooved them to start this process to try to limit the impact on the systems by limiting the number of people, and they follow the state regs. So I think that was probably one of the big driving forces when they first did it, because they're a lot more sensitive than Harwich is. We've had municipal water, you know, we don't have sewer, but now we're going to be getting.
John?
Does someone actually go out to the house and inspect it?
Yes,
So-
every rental house that has a license is inspected every 3 years.
So 1,300 homes, that's,
I'm
Personnel
pretty
is
sure
gonna
we're
be going
doing that
down.
on our long-term stuff here,
wow.
but it's, the new ballgame is short-term. And
Does that help
there's a definition now that even the governor changed. It used to be 0 days, and now it's, what, 2 weeks, 14 days? yeah.
14 days, right.
Yeah,
Is that the health
so,
department that does that?
In Eastham it is.
yeah.
They're gonna be asking for personnel to inspect houses, I would
Yeah.
assume.
All right, so if you look at this document carefully, it tells you where all the money comes from. And you can see that the cherry sheet amount is not a big one. That used to be like $3 million in the 90s. Now it's like 600,000. And at one point, we were a net zero town.
Yeah.
We didn't rely on the state for anything. So it's, on the one hand, when, back in the day, when the state demanded stuff, we'd say, well, okay, what are they gonna do? You know,
I told you.
so, in any event, we
Just for
have
clarification.
$65 million this year in income, and we spent, oh, look, $65 million in spending, so down at the bottom. So that left us $2,248, which will go into free cash at a future year. So,
Just-
we have all of that to, additional to come
Just
in.
for my edification.
Yes.
Overlay surplus.
Overlay surplus, I was just talking about that today myself. If you look a little bit lower, you see the overlay account. The
Oh, yeah.
overlay account is
Yep.
what they use for abatements.
Yep.
That's an interesting account. It's probably the only one where we have to do it twice, right? It's $2 for one, basically. You have to raise it, and then you have to spend it. So for us, and they use it for abatements. So people come in and say, well, my deck isn't that much money, or my house isn't that much money, or whatever, and they get an abatement, that comes out of that fund.
Okay.
And then when they, every 3 years, they have to have cleaned that fund out, the previous years, is that correct still, or? It used to be, only because there's been some changes since I looked at that last, but it used to be that you had a 3-year lag time where they would settle court cases and things. I remember when the big Stop and Shop came in, that was a big difference. It was $80,000 being talked about a year and so forth. But when all is said and done, and you can clear up the 3-year part, they take the leftover money and turn it back in. The assessors do that, so that 100,000. So that looks like a great number, we get to spend it, but it cost us $200,000 to have that left over.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, Karen.
The Municipal Modernization Act released the town from tracking
Year by
overlay
year.
on an annual basis. So it's
Okay.
one bucket now instead of by year.
Okay.
And every year, the Board of Assessors analyze what their overlay balance is and whether they think it's sufficient to support future abatements. And then they'll release what amounts that are deemed as revenue for the town, and that's where you see the overlay surplus.
Okay.
Now, the 460,000 that we put into overlay this year, that is, when a town calculates it reserves, that's considered as part of its reserve, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah, like the Finance Committee Reserve Fund, this amount, and there are certain things that count as part of your reserve. So, you know, one of the goals the town administrator has is to build up reserves, that's one of the ways to do it. But that particular bucket costs the taxpayers twice as much to build it. In other words, they have to spend $900,000 to get $450 in there.
Yep.
Right? That's a fun one. So you see that one go up by 10, just remember it's 20.
Yes.
So that's where your money comes from, and it's gonna be, you know, you see the school budgets in there. We just heard that at least that tech number is gonna go up by the 800 and something thousand that we were just updated on, plus what their normal increases or decreases would be. You don't get many decreases, but you certainly get increases. So that number's going up. We've already heard, at least I've seen one newspaper article on our schools, Monomoy school system, and they're wrestling with a big number. And then our own town stuff on the town side, which is usually a smaller number, but it goes up as well, it seems. So that's where your money comes from, and that's where it goes, kind of deal. But I just wanted to at least get a chance to start that discussion off and kind of say that what happens, especially for the new people, what happens with us as a committee is we've kind of had a nice, easy pace going so far. We've had some nice workshops and we've had some things going on, but all of a sudden, as we start to hit February 1st and beyond, things are going to accelerate for us. We'll start having meetings more often, and we'll start talking about a lot more numbers, and then at some point in February, we'll have a warrant in front of us. We try to get a draft warrant as quick as we can to start to see what's coming on, but that warrant's going to have $70 million or so in it, or more.
Not so bad.
You compared to last year. Last year was the first one over 100 million for a warrant in the town. And we start having to take positions on the budgets and on the articles. And just like we did with the capital plan, with the budget, we can get real picky and go through it department by department and talk about each one, or we can just say, yeah, the town administrator did great, we're voting it. Those are our options. It really depends on how we feel as a committee and what we see and what bothers us and what doesn't bother us. It's up to us to figure out where we want to go with it. Just like with the capital plan, we're going to eventually have to vote something here and so forth. Jack had a question.
No, I didn't.
As a
On
comment.
On a practical matter, if you're planning on traveling, starting today, tomorrow, and through 1st of May-ish, let Dana know or me know,
Yep.
so that we can keep track, that we will definitely have a quorum, what the problems be, if we need to get a remote set up, something like that. But
And
if
those
you
are
disappear-
possible, yeah.
If you disappear and we don't know if you're just kind of staying home watching TV for a while or what, if you're traveling in Ulaanbaatar, we probably can't get good reception there. So we
Been
probably
there
need,
before.
we need to know in advance what the plan is.
I was there one year, right, for a meeting?
Yeah.
Dana, do you have do you have a sense of when the meetings will be scheduled? I do have some extensive travel coming up for work for the next 4 weeks or so.
No, it won't really get going until into February, and
Okay.
mid-February is when the warrant is due, so
I'll be here.
March is gonna be a heavy month. We try to get a lot of stuff done if we can prior to the warrant going to print.
Right.
And if you look at warrants, not only do we have to have a position on every article, we also have to have our reasoning behind our position. Now, in some cases, we will make, as Jack said earlier, no recommendation pending further information. And that will be our recommendation. That will be our vote. But certainly, by the time you get to town meeting, you're gonna fix that and have either a yay or a nay. But as many of them as we possibly can, we wanna have voted with a reason underneath it as to why we voted that way. So, certainly, there'll be heavy pressure on us to get the warrant and start going into it. And we'll take a night right off the bat and take all the customary ones and say, these are the same, they've been for 20 years, do we want to argue about them? No. Boom, and vote something. Maybe this is a year we argue about some of them, but we try to get those out of the way and our reasons for them, and then we start working on that. And generally, because they're the biggest money and hardest to fit everything into, the big budgets come towards the end in voting. But it doesn't mean we don't start talking about them early. We'll start, just like here, this is January, we're raising some possible objections to what's on here. We might not vote those, we might say they're fine, but right now we're talking about them. Jack?
And the big one is the schools, the school budget, not Cape Cod Tech, but Monomoy. And, there's gonna be a lot of conversation and back and forth. We'll get the school committee probably to come in and talk, and Scott, and we'll probably wanna argue a little bit with the selectmen, depending on their stance.
Yeah.
So on.
And just because I'm not a member of the school committee doesn't mean I still have the same questions. I would have asked them earlier if I was a member, but now I can still ask them as a finance committee member. And I think that was part of the plan, but I have some questions already for what they've got coming up. Yes?
I'm just, again, from Eastham, we just got some of the numbers in, and there's a lot of Monomoy students moving over to the Nauset Regional. And I'm just hoping that when they talk to us, we can talk about what they're trying to do to keep those people, keep
Yeah.
the students there, because that's gonna cost us.
Student population, over the next 5 years, is gonna be an ongoing, changing topic. I really.
Eastham is predicting 2 years out, they're not gonna have anybody in kindergarten.
Think about that.
Eastham?
It's pretty sad.
I mean, it started in, it's rolling right up the Cape, isn't it?
It's going right up, yeah.
It's rolling right up the Cape, and guess who's in the bullseye at some point?
Oh, yeah, we are too. We're gonna, I mean, we have a bigger population here than they have.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah, Angela.
No, I'm.
Angelo.
Oh, just a question of the finance director. If we know, if you have any idea of changes in what the total budget might be? In other words, the selectmen there said they wanted to be at 2.5%. And Chris said he's gonna be here. If you get more information on where those numbers should be, it would be helpful for us to know how to deal with some of the activity, just to try and match the targets.
I actually will be meeting and trying to, I kind of know pretty much what numbers the committee should be looking at anyways, and I'll try to get some historical stuff on that. I have talked to the deputy assessor just to get the overlay numbers because of that change, where it all goes into one pool now as to what's coming in and out of that and so forth. I think this is gonna be a year to look at things a little tightly, but who knows where people go. We start out making good speeches, but the votes later don't usually back it up, and I wanna try and see where we go this year. I wanna back some stuff up. Anything else to come before us on?
On the remote, like you said, Dana, can we actually vote on that if we call in remote? Is that?
Yes, you cannot use the remote to establish a quorum.
Right.
In other words, if there are 5 of us here, and 4 people out on the road, they can all call in and be part of the meeting and be recognized and so forth, and there's a certain procedure that the chair follows, but can be done. You just can't use that to make your quorum to
Right,
have the
okay.
meeting. Once you have a quorum, but they can vote and participate and so forth, and
That's
I've,
good to know, yeah.
I've done it before. I've been in different parts of the world.
Yeah.
Kuala Lumpur is one of them. And called in, 12 hours difference.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
it's tough.
it's possible, but a little, a little bit hard. With a 9-member group, we need 5 people. We were very fortunate to get this room available this year. It wasn't last year for this night, for our meetings. So I've got us booked through April, and we'll keep on going. I did, anything else that you want to talk about on the operating budget before we?
No.
We'll close that workshop and go back to the actual agenda, which is old business, new business, and open session. Anything under old business?
Just had a question.
Yes.
You had originally talked about changing the time to 6:30.
Yes, I blew that this time around. I
Okay.
didn't change, I changed the place, everything, but I didn't change the time. I will change
I
it
got
for
in my
next
car
time.
at
That was
6
my
o'clock,
mistake.
and I said, wait a minute.
Yep, I did talk about that and made an error.
Okay.
Era.
And the purpose of having it here is to be able to record it.
Right.
From what I understand, they will find the beginning and the ending of our meeting,
Right.
and they will put it on YouTube tomorrow afternoon. To the best of my knowledge, that's,
The
they take care
website
of that.
or YouTube? The website or?
The website will come later. They've got a lot of stuff. I'm not sure.
Okay.
They've got a lot of stuff on their actual program that they're already filled up on, but they will get the meeting posted to YouTube. But the reason we want to be here is that the town administrator has told me that he has 1 or 2 people that would be willing to now type our minutes based on this, rather than John and I doing it as a team and our penmanship.
Good job. I am a little concerned about if we get the school committee and Scott and a couple the other people, it's gonna be kind of cramped in here.
Yeah, and
Really
those meetings might be,
Yeah. maybe
it might be
less
better
than-
to go to the other. I still didn't cancel everything over there yet. I wanted to see how tonight went too. So at some point, I'll figure it out and make sure we're only scheduled in one room each time, but
That'd be good.
I also wanted to ask the board how they felt about, speaking of the schools, if maybe in early March or some later time frame, do you see an advantage, or would it be a good idea to sit down at some point with the Chatham Finance Committee and talk about where we are on the school budget? I see
We
some
don't have a
advantages to
position
that.
yet.
No, but I mean, is that something that you could foresee as something that, only because I want to at least get that thought out there. At our next meeting, I'll see if there's really an interest in it, because we'll start getting closer to a budget. But at some point, I don't know if that's
What are
something
the
that would help us.
benefits you see?
First, to see if we are on the same page. Like, I look at what's going on in, to the west of us. I'll just say it, but as politely as I can. And you have 2 towns that really have different views of where they are financially and where their stake is in the total pot. We might be cruising along saying, oh, we gotta do this and that and the other thing, and they're going, I don't see a problem, everything, I don't know. I just think I think it's a good idea for the school committees themselves to get together for the public schools. I think the towns in the Monomoy district, if there was 4 towns in it, I would want at some point to hear from the other finance committees as to what they're thinking and where they are. And, they might say, geez, we're getting money in from the state, we're getting money in from the sewer system and all something, we got no problem at all. I don't know. maybe they're doing great, maybe they're not, but I'd like to at least be able to share with them what we're going through.
My initial reaction is, given the message that you kind of sent out during your interview about the continuing increasing year after year after year
Mhm.
after year, that at some point, something is gonna have to happen to control that, those increasing expenditures, so we should probably assess just exactly what Chatham's philosophy is on their budget, and so that we are on the same page.
So, and the idea of having a school meeting in this room probably doesn't make sense. At some point, if we were gonna have a joint meeting with them down the road, if we think it's something that would benefit us, then we would have that in a different room as well. But I was thinking of different things, and that was one of the ones I kinda kicked the tires on.
I think it's a good idea.
Anything else to come before us tonight?
Do we have enough budget money for the MMA attendees?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, okay.
And overall in our budget, we're not spending money for a clerical person at this point because John and I are doing it. And so that, even though that's in a different bucket than salary and wages, not expenses, it's something that at least is under the finance committee bucket anyways. So we're not, last year we did overspend our budget, right? Last year we had to transfer money to ourselves to cover MMA.
$100.
But, you know, budget-wise, it really is a benefit for, and I can't stress enough to get as many people from this committee to go as possible. It really, whether you go this year, next year, or 2 years from now, try to work it in somehow. There's also a Western Mass meeting every year for finance committees, and I've attended those before, and they're beneficial. It's during a different time of year, so it's sometimes easier to get to for some people, but you learn, and that's makes you a better finance committee member, I think, so.
If you go each year, you learn something about the other towns, you can see the changes that are
Yeah.
occurring too.
I mean, I was serious in that interview MMA has helped me. I hate to scare people with how many years I've been going to MMA now, but it's a long time, and I learn something every year. I bring back stuff for whatever committee I'm on every year. It's beneficial, whether you're buying a fire truck or a police car or whatever.
I move we adjourn.
Is there a second
Second.
motion? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Right. Oh, next
Um,
meeting.